When people think about large predatory dinosaurs, everything tends to start and end with Tyrannosaurus rex. It's treated like the peak, the final version. The animal that shows up at the end of the story once evolution has figured everything out. But that skips over a much more interesting part of the timeline. About 10 million years before T-Rex ever appeared, North America already had a large, highly specialized tyrannosaur sitting at the top of the food chain. That dinosaur was Daspletosaurus. For several million years, this animal dominated its environment. Its fossils appear again and again in the same regions as some of the largest herbivores of the time. Whatever lived there had to contend with it. Whatever survived did so alongside it. And while Tyrannosaurus rex would eventually arrive and take that role even further, it didn't appear out of nowhere. Daspletosaurus sits at a critical moment in that story. It shows what the Tyrannosaur body plan looked like before the final chapter. Not the ending, but part of the foundation. At first glance, Daspletosaurus already looks like a Tyrannosaurus rex. The same overall shape shows up immediately: an oversized head, thick neck, powerful hind legs, a long counterbalancing tail, and extremely small arms. Even without knowing the name, most people would recognize it as a classic tyrannosaur. That resemblance isn't coincidence. It's the result of a lineage that was already well established long before T-Rex appeared. What makes this lineage especially interesting is that Daspletosaurus wasn't a single static animal. Paleontologists now recognize multiple species that appear in sequence through time. Daspletosaurus turosus shows up first, followed later by Daspletosaurus wilsoni, and then Daspletosaurus horneri. Each species appears slightly later in the fossil record and carries subtle changes in skull shape and structure. Instead of branching into many unrelated forms, these animals form a straight evolutionary line, where one gradually shifts into the next. Daspletosaurus horneri is the final and most derived member of that line. It lived around 75 million years ago, making it the closest in time to Tyrannosaurus rex, which appears a few million years later near the end of the Cretaceous. Earlier species, like D. turosus, lived closer to 77 million years ago, while D. wilsoni falls between them. This tight timeline matters because it shows the Tyrannosaur body plan being refined step by step within the same region of Western North America. Anatomically, Daspletosaurus horneri and Tyrannosaurus rex are especially close. Both had deep, reinforced skulls built to handle extreme bite forces. The snout in D. horneri is broad and compact, a feature that increases mechanical efficiency during biting and closely mirrors what is later seen in T. rex. The teeth are thick, curved, and serrated, designed to withstand heavy stress while penetrating bone. Compared to earlier Daspletosaurus species, D. horneri shows expanded air spaces in the skull and taller eye sockets, traits that continue into T. rex. Tyrannosaurus rex takes these same features and pushes them further. The skull becomes deeper and wider, the body grows heavier, and the bite force increases alongside overall size. But the underlying structure is already present in Daspletosaurus horneri. The transition isn't abrupt, it's gradual, visible in both anatomy and time. That's what makes Daspletosaurus important. It documents the final steps leading up to the T-Rex. Daspletosaurus carried its power in its head. The skull was thick-boned and heavily reinforced, especially around the jaws, where stress accumulated every time the animal fed or fought. The The structure shows no signs of being lightly built or fragile. Every surface that mattered was strengthened to withstand force applied repeatedly over long periods of time. The teeth confirm how that force was delivered. Each tooth was broad, conical, and edged with serrations designed to maintain grip once embedded. Fossils preserve puncture marks in bone, shattered limbs, and teeth broken off during feeding and still lodged in prey remains. These injuries appear across multiple species and sites, showing that contact with bone happened often and at full force. The face itself carries important clues. The bones of the snout and jaws are rough and deeply textured, indicating thick skin packed with sensory nerves. This type of surface allows detailed feedback at the point of contact. Pressure, movement, and resistance would have been immediately detectable through the face and jaws during feeding. That sensory input mattered during close contact with large animals. Maintaining a grip required constant adjustment, especially when prey struggled or resisted. The skull and facial structure show an animal capable of applying force while staying aware of what was happening at the bite site. Taken together, the skull, teeth, and face form a single system built for repeated use. Feeding, fighting, and holding prey all place stress on the same structures, and those structures were clearly capable of handling it over and over again. With this strong skull and jaw anatomy, Daspletosaurus likely preferred hunting at close range. Its body, proportions, and muscle attachments all point toward encounters that unfolded quickly and decisively. This animal moved with control through forested floodplains and river systems, environments where visibility was limited and movement was constrained. Dense vegetation and uneven ground favored predators that could position themselves well rather than pursue prey over long distances. Once Daspletosaurus closed the gap, the encounter shifted immediately to physical force. With its jaws doing most of the work, a single bite had the potential to disable prey by crushing bone, damaging muscle, or anchoring the animal in place. Targets likely included large herbivores capable of resisting or fighting back, which meant these encounters were violent and direct. The anatomy supports this kind of interaction: a stable stance, a heavy tail for balance, and a skull designed to withstand repeated impact. Fossils preserve evidence of this behavior. Bite marks on prey animals show significant force applied to their limbs and bodies, not just surface damage. Tyrannosaur bones also show healed injuries from other large predators, indicating that confrontations between animals of similar size happened and were sometimes survived. These encounters were part of life in the ecosystem Daspletosaurus occupied. Survival depended on committing fully once contact was made. The goal was control, locking onto prey, maintaining position, and applying enough force to end the struggle. That approach proved effective. Daspletosaurus persisted for millions of years, holding its position as a dominant predator in Late Cretaceous North America. The strategy worked long enough to shape what came next. The lineage continued, refined, and eventually produced an even larger tyrannosaur that carried these same principles forward. We've learned a bit about how it likely hunted. So what did it eat? Daspletosaurus fed on some of the largest animals present in its environment. Fossils found in the same formations include horned dinosaurs, duck-billed hadrosaurs, and heavily built plant eaters that required strength and control to subdue. Their remains preserve direct evidence of interactions with large predators. Bite marks on skulls, limbs, and body bones show deep punctures and crushed surfaces. In some cases, bone growth around the damage indicates survival after injury. Other specimens show fractures and punctures with no signs of healing, marking fatal encounters. These patterns appear consistently across multiple sites. The fossil record also documents conflict among tyrannosaurs. Several Daspletosaurus specimens carry bite wounds on the skull, hips, and tail. The spacing and shape of these marks match tyrannosaur teeth and occur in areas associated with combat and dominance behavior. Healed injuries indicate that individuals survived serious trauma and continued feeding afterward. This suggests repeated exposure to conflict rather than isolated incidents. Access to food and territory required physical engagement, and the cost of holding position was written directly into the bones. Within this ecosystem, survival depended on maintaining control through force applied directly and decisively. Daspletosaurus held its place by meeting those demands again and again. Daspletosaurus sits within a clear evolutionary sequence preserved in the fossil record. Fossils from different time layers show a gradual progression rather than an abrupt shift. Earlier forms, such as Daspletosaurus tyrosus, appear first, followed by Daspletosaurus wilsoni, and later Daspletosaurus horneri. These species occur in order through time and share a growing set of anatomical traits. Across this sequence, changes accumulate slowly. Skulls become broader and deeper. Eye sockets grow taller. Air spaces within the skull expand. Jaw structure shifts toward increased strength and efficiency. Each species retains the core tyrannosaur build while showing incremental refinements rather than dramatic redesigns. This pattern reflects an evolutionary process known as anagenesis, where one population gradually transforms into another without splitting into multiple branches. Among large theropod dinosaurs, Daspletosaurus provides one of the strongest examples of this kind of linear change. The lineage remains continuous, with each stage preserving traits from the previous one while adding new structural modifications. As these changes progress, the skull becomes increasingly reinforced and better suited for delivering repeated high-force bites. The jaw muscles attach to larger surfaces. The proportions of the head shift to accommodate greater stress during feeding. Over millions of years, these refinements accumulate into a predator built around extreme bite performance and close-range dominance. The final result of this sequence appears later in the fossil record as Tyrannosaurus rex. Its anatomy reflects the same structural foundations seen earlier in Daspletosaurus, carried forward and expanded. The evolutionary groundwork had already been established long before the last member of the lineage appeared. Daspletosaurus represents a critical stretch of that transformation, preserved step by step in stone. Daspletosaurus didn't vanish because it fell behind. Its disappearance reflects how slow linear evolution eventually turns into new species. Coastlines shifted as the western interior seaway advanced and retreated. Floodplains turned into forests, then back again. Prey populations rose, declined, and reorganized. Every change reshaped the food web, and predators had to track those changes to survive. For millions of years, Daspletosaurus fit that environment extremely well. It occupied the top predator role across what is now Montana and Alberta during the Campanian stage. Fossils place it squarely in ecosystems packed with large herbivores, other tyrannosaurs, and constant competition. That pressure didn't remove Daspletosaurus overnight. Instead, it drove slow anatomical shifts across generations. This means that fossils suggest that Daspletosaurus didn't exist as a single, unchanging species, but as a sequence of closely related forms replacing one another over time. This strongly suggests that Daspletosaurus horneri represents the final stage in a lineage that ultimately produced T-Rex. If stories like this interest you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps keep these deep dives coming. Thank you for watching.